Dive straight into a completely bizarre, high-stakes story today. We're looking at a wild narrative that blends intense academic rivalry, extreme wealth, and, well, desperate survival. It's an explainer of a story where the valedictorian and the school bad boys strike a deal that leaves the entire student body absolutely horrified. Okay, picture this. You're our protagonist, Eleanor. You're literally clutching your backpack, freezing in this frayed, paper-thin winter coat when the school's most volatile rebel, Vincent, corners you in an alley. He's got a lollipop in his mouth and just drops this wild proposition. You get good grades. You're the valedictorian. You can crush Carter. Be my girlfriend, and I'll pay you. I mean, it's a completely absurd offer, but the amount of money he names, it's a number Eleanor simply cannot refuse. So, right at the center of all this chaos is an absolutely fierce academic rivalry. Eleanor and Carter naturally sit right next to each other in AP Honors. They're the valedictorian and the salutatorian. But look at the stark contrast. Carter's side is perfectly organized and just screams old money. Eleanor's side is neat, but honestly kind of pathetic. Carter comes from incredible wealth, while Eleanor is an orphan struggling just to keep her lights on. They're academic equals for sure, but in reality, they're worlds apart. Now, on one side of this dynamic, we've got Carter. He's the pristine golden boy, right? Perfect grades, perfect temper, the guy everyone naturally favors. Contrast him with Vincent. He's volatile, rebellious, and has a seriously lethal temper. Literally no one dares cross him. And Vincent's main goal in life, seemingly, is to completely humiliate Carter. To pull that off, he realizes he needs the one person who can consistently beat Carter at his own game. Yep, Eleanor. So what does a fake relationship actually look like when it's between a ruthless bad boy and a brilliant survivalist? Well, it's completely transactional. Eleanor's duties include daily public displays of affection and, of course, crushing Carter on exams. In exchange, Vincent is offering a $15,000 bonus, daily snacks, and an emergency wardrobe fund. And get this. Eleanor doesn't blush. She doesn't even hesitate. She looks at this terrifying, untouchable tyrant and literally just sees a walking paycheck. When Carter's fake girlfriend brings him freshly baked cookies, Eleanor puts on this brilliant performance of a naive, lovesick teenage girl. She claims she wants to fight the whole world for Vincent, but really, it's just to secure her bonuses. She's fiercely practical. The rumors, the teacher's judgmental glares, the target on her back, none of it matters. Because to her, trouble meant nothing in the face of cold, hard cash. And wow, does this whole thing escalate quickly. Vincent starts guarding her window every single day, talking loud enough for Carter to hear while they exchange snacks. The school message board completely blows up with wild rumors about them. When a student starts gossiping maliciously about Eleanor, Vincent doesn't just ask him to stop. No way. He tracks the guy down, pins him to the ground, and demands pain and suffering compensation to hand right over to Eleanor. And fueled by this massive influx of cash, Eleanor's usual 5-point gap over Carter stretches to over a dozen points. Vincent is absolutely thrilled. But then, the whole comedic vibe just stops and things get very, very real. Eleanor's paper-thin thrift store coat finally fails her, and she actually collapses from acute hypothermia and exhaustion. She wakes up later in the sterile school infirmary. Carter had been checking her fever when Vincent walked in. And seeing Carter touching Eleanor, Vincent flies into an absolute unbridled rage. He lands a solid right hook, breaking the salutarian's pristine nose, and earns himself a solid 3-day suspension. So Eleanor wakes up, and there's Vincent. He's bruised, he's battered, and he's just sitting there in this tiny folding chair. And when he finds out she collapsed because her coat is basically a rag, he doesn't just offer sympathy. He pulls out a thick, band-wrapped stack of $100 bills and slams it right onto her hospital tray. $50,000 in cash. He calls it an emergency maintenance fee for his top asset and tells her to go buy a heavy, warm coat so she doesn't freeze to death on his watch. Now, Carter walks into the infirmary, sees the $50,000, and is just disgusted. He tells Eleanor that Vincent is using her, throwing dirty money at her and dragging her into the gutter. Later, he confronts her, saying she's degrading herself by playing a fake girlfriend when she could have just asked him for help from his family's foundations. He looks at her like she's this tragic charity case. But Eleanor, she sees it entirely differently. Well, Eleanor drops her deadpan mask and just absolutely schools Carter here. She says, I perform a service, I keep my rank, I crush you on exams. It's a business transaction. It's honest. She explains that dignity doesn't buy heating oil in December. You see, Carter's pity requires her to be a victim Vincent's contract, as absurd as it is, treats her like a professional. He pays her a wage for a service. She actively respects the transactional honesty of the bad boy over the condescending charity of the golden boy. The stakes totally jump again when Vincent comes back from suspension and hands Eleanor her next assignment, the Winter Charity Gala. The pay, $20,000. The goal, outshine everyone in the room and humiliate Carter's parents, who happen to be co-hosting. Vincent even sends her this exquisite, deep navy blue velvet gown. When she steps out of the luxury sedan, for the first time in her life, she doesn't look like an orphan struggling to survive. She looks like royalty. And when Vincent sees her, the ruthless bad boy is left completely speechless. So at the gala, they are absolutely the center of attention. But Carter actually manages to pull Eleanor aside on a balcony to give her this desperate warning. He reveals the dark truth behind the rivalry. It turns out Vincent isn't just picking fights for fun. He's a ruined heir. His family is bleeding money from bad investments. And the real kicker? Carter's family recently bought out Vincent's father's shipping shares. Carter insists Vincent is just parading Eleanor around as a weapon to insult his parents out of bitter jealousy. So, does Eleanor break down? Does she feel used? No, not even for a single second. She looks the golden boy dead in the eye and delivers this devastating line. Your family took his family's shares, Carter, but Vincent gave me my dignity. She basically tells him that if Vincent wants to use her to slap Carter's family in the face, she's going to let him, and she's going to do it brilliantly. Then she just leaves Carter standing alone in the shadows. But, this leads us with a massive question, one that completely flips this entire narrative on its head. If Vincent is actually losing his family fortune, why on earth is he throwing tens of thousands of dollars at a high school classmate? What was the actual point of this insanely expensive fake dating contract? The answer actually comes from Marcus, one of Vincent's lackeys. He reveals that 3 months before any of this even started, Vincent saw Eleanor standing in the rain, crying because she couldn't afford a $4 umbrella. Vincent wanted to help, but he knew Eleanor's fierce, stubborn pride would make her reject a direct handout. So he fabricated this entire elaborate rivalry. He literally used his remaining trust fund to build a multi-thousand-dollar theater production just to funnel money into her bank account so she could survive the winter without hurting her pride. So Eleanor goes and confronts Vincent, and his whole tough guy facade just completely shatters into sheer terror the second he sees a tear slip down her cheek. He panics, telling her to keep the money, just please don't cry. And Eleanor grabs his lapels and delivers this hilariously emotional line. I'm crying because I realize I'm going to have to manage your terrible financial decisions for the rest of my life. Right there on the ballroom floor, she voids the fake contract and tells him that from now on, if he wants her by his side, it's going to be for free. And they share this massive cinematic kiss right in front of high society. From there, the final semester is just a blur of real romance. Eleanor scores a near-perfect 1590 on her SATs, comfortably securing her valedictorian spot. Fast forward to graduation day. Standing at the podium, delivering her valedictorian speech, Eleanor looks out at the crowd. She publicly thanks her top investor, the guy who paid her $15,000 to crush her rivals, bought her a giant green coat, and taught her that love is an equation worth solving. Vincent's crew blows air horns, and Vincent himself just laughs triumphantly right in front of the horrified principal. And the payoff is just amazing. Fast forward 4 years later, Eleanor is at Yale Law School, publishing law reviews. Vincent? He's a successful managing director of his own commercial real estate firm. They run into Carter on the street one day, who happens to be interning at a major firm. But there's no more bitterness. Vincent tells Eleanor he doesn't need to pick fights anymore, because he already won the only prize that actually matters. And really, that brings us to the core takeaway of this incredible story. What happens when you realize the most valuable things in life aren't given to you, but earned? Eleanor started out in the margins, freezing and calculating pennies, and she earned every single bit of her success and her romance. It's a brilliant reminder that sometimes the most chaotic, transactional beginnings can lead to the absolute most fiercely loyal and successful partnerships. What a fantastic narrative to unpack today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.